They remembered me this year, after 15 years of silence, forgotten invitations, and photos posted online without my name. My parents suddenly wanted a family Christmas. Except it was not at their home. It was mine. I had learned long ago that waiting for their call only meant disappointment. But when Mom's number flashed across my screen 2 weeks ago, I picked it up anyway. Her voice was too bright. "Sweetheart, wouldn't it be lovely if we all spent Christmas together at your beach house? It's been too long." Too long. I could have told her exactly how long. 15 years. 15 Christmas mornings were spent pretending the quiet did not sting, pretending work or weather kept me busy, when in truth, I was just not invited. Every December, I watch their family photos go up, matching pajamas, fake smiles, the caption reading, "All together again." I was always the one missing. I told her yes, though. I said it as easily as I used to say sorry for things I did not do. For those of you listening, I wonder, have you ever agreed to something you already knew would hurt just to see if anyone noticed? Let me know in the comment. For me, that's where I was when I said yes. The morning they arrived, I was already awake. The ocean was flat and gray, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. I stood by the window with my coffee, watching their black SUV pull into the driveway. The house sat on a quiet stretch of beach near Seabrook, my first home that felt like mine. Every inch of it had been paid for in long workdays and short nights, selling houses no one believed I could sell, saving every dollar until I bought this one. It was not just a house. It was a boundary with walls. Mom stepped out first, dressed in white, her perfume heavy even from a distance. Dad followed, checking his reflection in the car window before he lifted the trunk. And then Lana, my sister, my parents' pride. She had a camera crew trailing her, all teeth and laughter. She waved like she was arriving at a movie set. "Faith, this place is gorgeous. You didn't tell us it looked like this." I smiled. "You never asked." They moved fast once they were inside. Lights, tripods, boxes labeled Christmas setup. Mom started arranging decorations before taking her coat off. "This space will be perfect for Lana's holiday special," she said. "The light, the colors, it's so warm, so family-like." Dad walked around like a property scout. "You know, sweetheart, this could help both of you. The exposure would be incredible." Exposure. That was his favorite word when he didn't want to pay for something. I leaned against the counter, letting them fill my home with noise. 15 years of being forgotten, and suddenly they remembered me, because the lighting was good. Mom turned to me, soft voice rehearsed. "I hope it's all right we brought some things from storage. Lana's team wanted to make the place more festive." "You mean more staged," I said. She blinked, smiled. "You always had an eye for design. Maybe after Christmas we can talk about using this house for future shoots. It would be great exposure." "You forgot to invite me for 15 Christmases," I said quietly. "You can't decorate your way into forgiveness." She froze for a second, then found her tone again. "Oh, honey, we didn't forget. We just assumed you were busy. You always seemed so independent." Independent. Their words are unnecessary. Lana walked over, camera in hand, hair perfect. "Can we film something quick? Just a little intro? You standing by the tree, me hugging you, Mom laughing. It'll be so cute." "You're filming in my house, Lana." She laughed. "That's what family does. We share. You're sharing my house." "I'm not sure that's the same thing." Dad's voice came from behind me. "Don't be dramatic. We all benefit from this. You can't put a price on family." I looked at him. "You've been doing it for years." He turned away, already on the phone bragging to someone about our beach house Christmas reunion. By noon, the crew left for lunch, leaving behind wires and half-wrapped presents. The living room looked like a studio. A tree stood in the corner, dressed in white and gold ornaments that were not mine. The stockings on the mantel read Mom, Dad, Lana, and Faith. I almost laughed. After all these years, they finally remembered to include me. By name only. I stepped outside. The air was colder now, the ocean rougher. Every wave hit the shore with a kind of rhythm that sounded like counting. 15. 15 years of silence. 15 times I waited for a call that never came. The first time, I drove to their house uninvited, gifts in hand. Cars filled the driveway. Laughter poured out from the windows. When Mom opened the door, she blinked, surprised. "Oh, honey, I thought you were spending Christmas with friends." Another year, I saw their family photo online, matching red pajamas. The caption said, "All together again." I was 20 miles away. That was the year I stopped calling. And now here they were, in the house I bought, the one place they had never touched, standing there like they owned it, like I should be grateful they finally remembered my name. The sky was turning darker, a thin line of orange over the water. Inside, I could hear Lana's voice rehearsing her lines, Mom humming, Dad giving orders. All of them are practicing family. I stayed outside until the stars came out. The cold air burned my skin, but it felt better than their kind of warmth. For 15 years, they forgot to invite me. This year, they remembered, but not because they missed me. They remembered because they needed a place that looked good on camera. I closed my eyes and listened to the waves. For once, I didn't feel left out. I felt ready to see what would happen when they realized the forgotten one had finally remembered herself. The first year they forgot me was the hardest. I was 23, still believing that family meant something unshakable, that forgetting was just an accident. That Christmas Eve, I dressed up, baked a pie, and drove an hour to my parents' house in Savannah without calling ahead. The driveway was full of cars. Through the window, I could see the tree glittering and hear laughter. My dad's booming voice, my mom's familiar giggle, Lana's perfect high tone. When I knocked, Mom opened the door with surprise that felt too practiced. "Oh, sweetheart, we thought you were spending the holidays with friends." Her smile was wide enough for the neighbors to see. I stood there holding the pie, feeling like I had walked into the wrong house. She took it from me and said they were just about to open gifts, but maybe we could talk after New Year's. I remember driving home that night with the radio off. The pie smell filled the car like a reminder. I told myself it was fine, that they were busy, that it would be different next year. It wasn't. Every year after that, the excuses got shorter and colder. Dad said work was hectic. Mom said they assumed I was traveling. Lana didn't say anything, but her photos did. Every Christmas morning, she posted matching family pajamas, gifts under the tree, the caption reading, "All together again." The first few times I tried calling, no one picked up. I left voicemails that started cheerful and ended in silence. Eventually, I stopped. For those of you listening, maybe you've had that moment when you realize you're the only one trying to keep something alive. That's what it felt like. A slow fade. A lesson taught in small doses. After a while, forgetting became their tradition, and pretending not to care became mine. I poured myself into work, showing houses to strangers who at least pretended to listen. I was good at it, too. Real estate didn't care where you came from or who forgot your birthday. It only cared if you showed up and closed the deal. By the time I turned 30, I had built a name people in Jacksonville recognized. I started saving, quietly. No celebrations, no family dinners. Money was simpler than love. You could see where it went. Every commission check, every late night, every signature moved me further from the people who once made me feel invisible. I think I needed that distance more than anything. The calls from Mom got fewer. Sometimes months went by. When she did call, it was to ask for something small, a referral, a market update, a favor for one of Dad's clients, never to ask how I was doing. Once she mentioned Lana's success online, how proud they were of her brand, her sponsorships, her perfect life. I congratulated her. I was proud too, in a detached way. It was easier to feel nothing than to wish I could be part of it. The last Christmas I spent alone before buying the house, I sat by the window of my apartment with a bottle of red wine, watching the city lights blur against the rain. I remember whispering, "Maybe they'll remember next year," just to hear how the words sounded. Then I laughed at myself because I already knew the answer. They had made forgetting an art form. I didn't realize it then, but that was the night I decided to stop waiting for an invitation that would never come. I spent New Year's morning scrolling through listings, not for client, but for myself. Beachfront property. Something quiet. Something mine. That's when I saw it. A small 2-story place near Seabrook. White wood and glass, nothing fancy, but the view made my heart stop. I could picture it immediately. Morning coffee on the porch, the sound of waves instead of small talk. a life with no audience. When I bought it 6 months later, I didn't tell my parents. They found out through a friend of a friend, and Mom called just long enough to say how proud she was, then quickly mentioned how Lana was planning a beach-themed video shoot soon. I told her it wasn't available for rent. She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. The house changed everything. It gave me quiet I didn't know I needed. I started sleeping better, cooking again, even laughing at small things. There was peace in hearing only the ocean and my own thoughts. But deep down, I knew the peace wouldn't last forever. My parents had a way of appearing when there was something to take. Maybe you know people like that, the ones who remember your name when it benefits them. For 15 years, they forgot. Then suddenly, they remembered. I didn't know it yet, but the moment they decided to celebrate Christmas in my house, their tradition of forgetting was about to end. Only this time, I would be the one deciding what to remember. The beach house was never supposed to be a statement. It was supposed to be peaceful. I had worked for 12 years selling homes for other people, watching them hug at closings and talk about where they would put their Christmas tree. Every time, I smiled and handed them the keys, then drove back to my small apartment where the only thing waiting for me was the hum of the refrigerator. I wasn't lonely, just quiet. There's a difference. Real estate teaches you how to read people fast. You learn who dreams small and who dreams loud. You also learn that most people never really own what they buy. They lease moments, they borrow pride. They decorate insecurity. I didn't want that kind of ownership. I wanted a home no one could take credit for, a place where silence didn't feel like punishment. The Seabrook listing appeared on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The photos were terrible, dark and grainy, but I saw the bones. A 2-story house, white clapboard, big front windows that caught the morning light. The price was fair, the seller desperate. I drove down that same day. When I stepped onto the porch, the ocean stretched out in front of me like something alive. The salt air stuck to my skin. I didn't even go inside before I called the agent and said, "I'll take it." People talk about buying houses as if it's about square footage or school. Districts, for me, it was about finally building a life that didn't depend on being invited into someone else's. Closing took 2 months. I signed every document under my company, Blue Tide Properties, LLC. I had started the LLC a few years earlier, mostly to protect investments, but now it felt like armor. Blue Tide wasn't just paperwork. It was me without the family name. It was everything I had built without anyone's permission. When the final signature went through, I drove to the house alone with a folding chair and a bottle of champagne. The place smelled like salt and dust, but when I opened the windows, the breeze made it feel alive again. I sat on the deck with the glass in my hand and listened to the waves crash. I remember thinking, this is what peace sounds like. The first few months were simple. I worked during the day, drove into town for groceries, painted the walls myself on weekends. I learned the patterns of the sea, when the tide came in, when the light hit the windows just right. Sometimes I would wake up early just to watch the fog roll in from the water. The quiet didn't bother me. It never had. I didn't tell my parents right away. It wasn't out of secrecy. I just didn't think it mattered to them. They had their lives, their company, their golden daughter. When Mom finally called after hearing from a friend that I had bought a house on the coast, she said, "Oh, sweetheart, we're so proud." Then, without pause, she added, "You know, Lana has been thinking about doing a beach lifestyle series. Maybe she could film a few videos there." I said no, but she didn't hear it. She kept talking about how perfect it would be, how families should help each other. I hung up before she finished her pitch. For a while, they left me alone again. That suited me fine. I had clients to manage, and a few new listings to stage. I was good at my job, and I liked being invisible when I wasn't working. The town was small, but I fit there. People waved, asked about the weather, and then let me be. I found a local handyman, Carl, who helped fix the shutters. He talked more than I did, but in a kind way. Most folks I meet buy places like this trying to run from something. You look like you finally found what you were chasing. Maybe he was right. Or maybe I'd just learned how to stop chasing altogether. There was one night in early December when I walked down to the beach. The stars were low, the ocean black and endless. I thought about all those Christmases I had watched from a distance, their laughter, their matching sweaters. The years I told myself I didn't care, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just detached. Their forgetting had stopped hurting when I stopped waiting for them to remember still. I noticed something that night. Even when you heal, memory lingers like salt on skin. It stays until something stirs it again. When I walked back to the house, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a link to Lana's latest video. The thumbnail showed her holding a Christmas wreath, the title reading, "Our Family's Coastal Christmas Plans." I didn't click it. I didn't need to. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was bright, rehearsed, the same tone she used when she wanted something. "Sweetheart, your sister has been so overwhelmed. We thought it might be nice to celebrate Christmas at your beach house this year. It would mean the world to us." I looked out the window at the waves, steady and endless. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "That sounds fine, Mom." When I hung up, the house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that hums like electricity before a storm. Somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't an invitation to reconnect. It was another transaction. They had remembered me at last, but not for the reason that mattered. And as I stood there watching the ocean pull back before another wave, I thought, let's see what happens when they remember me for the wrong reasons. By the third day, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. The living room had become a filming set, the kitchen a catering station, and the air smelled like burnt coffee and self-importance. Every surface had been rearranged. Even the throw pillows looked like they belonged to someone else. Lana's camera crew started each morning before sunrise, chasing perfect light. They filmed breakfast, staged gift wrapping, even retook spontaneous laughter. Mom floated from room to room fixing decorations, her voice all sugar and stage direction. Dad spent most of his time pacing the deck on his phone, negotiating with investors, talking about our new property. He didn't say my name once. I'd learned to stop correcting them. Instead, they think we're slow to react, but really, we're just recording everything. Lana filmed a segment that morning called "Family Comes First." I heard her from the hallway, the same smooth tone she used online. "My parents have always been my biggest inspiration," she said. Smile. "And now, being able to share this family getaway with them means everything." The cameraman nodded, impressed. I stepped into the frame long enough for her to notice, then kept walking. She blinked, momentarily off script. I didn't need to say a word. Later, while they filmed outside, I found a folder on the counter titled "Monroe Living, Coastal Expansion." Inside were printed renderings of new branding materials, product shots, logo mock-ups, and a banner that read, "The Monroe Family Beach Estate." My stomach tightened. Not from shock, but from recognition. It was the same feeling I'd had the year I drove to their house uninvited and found strangers opening gifts in my place. History doesn't repeat itself. People do. I placed the folder back where I found it. They hadn't asked for permission because they never thought they needed to. Forgetting was still their favorite form of entitlement. When Mom noticed me standing there, she smiled without guilt. "Oh, you found the plans. Isn't it exciting? Your dad thinks the beach house could be part of the company's lifestyle division. It's such a natural fit." I tilted my head. "For who?" "For us, sweetheart. Family." That word again. I nodded slowly. "Right. Family." She patted my arm like I was a polite child. "You'll thank us later." Dinner that night was almost theatrical. They insisted on eating by candlelight, while Lana recorded sound bites between. Bites of roast chicken. Dad told stories about building their business from nothing, about resilience, legacy, and teamwork. He said words like loyalty and trust as if they still meant something. I stayed quiet, letting their noise fill the space. The sound washed over me like static. Every now and then, I caught pieces of conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Words like investors, partnership, brand house. Mom poured more wine and leaned closer to Dad. "Once Lana's set up here full-time, it'll really feel like home." That line sat heavy in the air, but no one noticed my expression. I smiled and excused myself to refill the glasses. In the kitchen, I stared at my reflection in the window. For years, I'd asked myself what I had done wrong to deserve being forgotten. Now, I realized I hadn't done anything wrong at all. I'd just stopped being useful to them. The ocean roared outside, steady and unbothered. It had seen 1,000 families just like mine, Loud, greedy, temporary. It didn't take sides. It just kept erasing footprints. I turned off the kitchen light and walked back to the table. The candles flickered, casting their faces in soft gold. For a moment, I tried to see them as strangers. It was easier that way. Dad raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I lifted mine too. "To remember what matters." Mom smiled, missing the meaning. Lana clinked her glass like a victory. After dinner, I stepped out onto the porch. The cold wind hit my face, grounding me. Inside, laughter continued, too bright to be real. I watched them through the glass, their silhouettes moving in practiced harmony. They had spent 15 years forgetting me. Now they remembered because they needed what I had. And they were about to find out what it costs to remember the wrong person. They came with a truck the next morning. Not a car full of groceries or a basket of cinnamon rolls, but a rental truck with a ramp and 2 men in matching shirts who moved like a practiced team. I heard the backup beeps before I saw it. That harsh little sound that tells you something heavy is about to be set down, where it does not belong. I was on the porch with coffee when the truck settled against the curb and the ramp clanged to the pavement. Dad stood in the driveway with a clipboard, like a foreman. Mom pointed at the front door with a bright smile, and Lana filmed herself, stepping out of the SUV like a beach queen. Boxes slid into view one by one. The black marker labels were big enough to read from the steps. Lana's room. Vanity. Wardrobe. Ring lights. The last one made me laugh without humor. They had planned this. Not a visit. Not family. Occupation disguised as holiday spirit. I stayed seated while the first 2 boxes came up the ramp. The men were polite and quick. Dad gestured toward the guest room hallway as if he had drawn the floor plan. Mom reached for my keys out of habit, then stopped when she remembered she did not have them. "Faith, sweetie, can you unlock the side door so the men do not scuff the entry?" Her voice was honey poured over a blade. I set my cup down and stood. "You brought movers." She blinked like an actress caught in the wrong scene. "It is just a little help for Lana. She has been so overwhelmed. We can make her comfortable for a few months. It is quieter here. The ocean will be healing. Here as in my house." She nodded like that detail was paperwork. "Family home, sweetheart. We already have the color palette for her shoot schedule." Dad cleared his throat and tapped his clipboard. "We are paying for a storage unit nearby, but the essentials should go straight in today. Mattress first, vanity second. Lighting and garment racks after that. Do you want the garment racks in your office, or would you rather move your move?" "Desk?" Lana chimed in from the porch with a camera held high. "This is going to be so good for everyone. Audit the brand, refresh the family image, help my mental health." She glanced at her screen and changed her tone. "And, of course, be together." The movers waited in that quiet uncertainty tradesmen get when family pretend they are not arguing. I stepped between the ramp and the door and spoke to the men, not to my family. "Set everything inside the garage for now. Nothing goes into the house." The older mover nodded once. "You got it." Dad's voice sharpened. "Faith, do not be difficult. We agreed to spend Christmas together. This is a natural extension. You bought a 3-bedroom house. It will not even make a dent." Mom added soft music to the demand. "You always loved to share when you were little. Lana needs a peaceful place to rest." I looked at the marker words on the nearest box, and then at my sister, who was checking her hair on her phone. Rest looked a lot like a full production schedule. I stepped aside and held the garage door open. The movers rolled past me. The garage filled quickly. Garment bags like dark sails, a collapsed headboard, shoeboxes taped in neat stacks. A neon sign that read, "Lana Loves," stood out like a wound. Lana narrated to her followers while she pointed at my house. "We are moving the basics now, just the necessities." My parents surprised me. I am crying. I was not crying. I walked back inside and stood in the kitchen where the marble met the morning light. Their voices layered behind me like a radio station that would not tune out. Mom telling the movers where to place a full-length mirror. Dad on the phone with someone discussing a holiday content package. Lana practiced surprise for her audience, even though nothing about the day was accidental. I watched the ocean through the glass. The tide was coming in. That helped. The ocean never asks permission. It just claims what belongs to it. and retreats when it is ready. Mom slipped in beside me and lowered her voice as if this were a gentle request. We thought it might be nice to put a soft chair by the bedroom window. It will help Lana unwind. I ran my fingers across the edge of the counter. For how long? She smiled like I had asked the silliest thing. Until she is centered again. A few months. Maybe spring. Maybe longer if the series extends. The series meant sponsors. Sponsors needed sets. Sets needed control. My house was set to them, and I was the lighting crew they forgot to pay. Dad walked in reading from his notes. If we can stabilize internet speeds and get a fiber appointment next week, a weekly live segment is possible. He slid a page across the counter. A content calendar fell open. Monday, unboxings. Tuesday, Wellness by the Sea. Wednesday, Brand Partners Live. Thursday, Family Meal Challenge. Friday, Meet the Monroes. I flipped a page like I was browsing a menu and then closed it. I nodded toward the garage. Everything stays behind that door for now. Mom touched my arm. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Your sister is fragile. Lana looked up at the word fragile like it was a spotlight. She added a sniff and dabbed at a dry eye. I kept my expression level. If she is fragile, the internet is not the remedy. Silence dropped hard for a heartbeat. Dad finally said what had been living beneath all of it. Technically, family assets are communal. You are single. You do not need all this space. It is time you did something useful for the whole. The words were heavy with habit. Be useful. Not be loved, not to be respected. Useful. I poured more coffee and spoke as if I were discussing the weather. Everything in this house belongs to Blue Tide Properties. It is not communal. It is owned. Mom smiled as if I were a child pretending to be a lawyer. You and your papers. We are not fighting you, sweetheart. We are helping you. Pressure breeds resentment. Let us relieve you of the burden of holding my own keys. I left them in the kitchen and went to the garage. I asked the movers to pause. They set down a garment rack and waited. I tugged one box toward me and sliced the tape with my thumbnail. Inside were framed prints, large ones, staged photographs from Lana's brand shoots. I pulled one free and set it upright. The caption printed at the bottom read, Monroe Family Beach Estate. The photo was of my porch, my railing, my view. No mention of me. I closed the box and slid it back. Thank you, I said to the older mover. Please keep everything on this side of the line. He looked where I drew my foot across the concrete. That line I could respect. He smiled once and nodded. We got a couple more loads. Want us to bring the mattress in after? I shook my head. The mattress stays where it is. He rubbed the back of his neck and lowered his voice. You want me to leave the ramp up for a while? Looks like you might need a buffer. Yes, please. He gave me the kind of look people give when they have watched this movie before, and they know the ending is not going to be soft. An hour later, the garage was a tidy warehouse, and my parents had retreated to the deck to call more people. Lana walked through the hallway with a measuring tape, calling out lengths to her assistant. She reached my office door and held the tape against the wall where the bookshelf lived. How much space do we have if we take this out? The assistant read a number. She nodded and wrote it down. Great. The garment rack fits. I stepped into the doorway. My office is not available. She blinked at the word, not like it was a language she had heard before but never practiced. She laughed lightly. We can share. It is family. You will be in there during the day. I will use it at night. I pictured my own sleep, and then pictured the hum of ring lights pouring through a closed door at 1 a.m. Number. She opened her mouth to argue, and I pointed toward the living room. There is plenty of space out there. She frowned. That will ruin the shot. I said nothing. The ocean said enough. By late afternoon, the sky had turned a dull silver and the wind picked up. Our neighbors slowed as they passed, polite curiosity on their faces. The older couple from 2 houses down waved. Their eyes said they understood more than they would ever ask. Mom announced an early dinner and lifted a bottle of sparkling water like it was a trophy. To new beginnings. Dad kissed the top of Lana's head for the camera and called her a survivor. I let the toast happen. I let the camera roll. I nodded in all the right places, and even smiled when the assistant said now. Hold that for 3 seconds. Then I rinsed my glass and walked to my bedroom. I locked the door, set my phone on the dresser, and called Olivia. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice all clean edges. I kept my tone even. They brought a moving truck. Topic: boxes are labeled like she is here for a lease term. They have branded prints that show my porch with their family name printed across the bottom. They are telling people she will be here for months. Olivia was quiet for a beat, typing. Did anybody sign anything in front of you? Number: any mention of rent, sublet, mail forwarding, not yet. They did bring a mattress. The garage is full. Okay, she said, her voice shifting into strategy. Do not argue, do not post, do not text. Let them act. Then we lock it down. You already hold the title under Blue Tide. We will reinforce the perimeter. Tomorrow morning, I called a locksmith, got every exterior lock swapped, and a keypad on the side gate. I will send you a guest occupancy letter under the LLC that makes any stay. Written invitation only. No exceptions. Print it and tape it inside the entry closet. If they push, you have rules, not feelings. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the water beyond the glass. Olivia, they will say I am cruel. She exhaled. Let them. Cruel is a word people use when they hit a boundary for the first time. She paused. 2 more things. Put exterior cameras on the driveway and front door if you have not already. And schedule a fiber appointment under the LLC with a new password that only you hold. Do not let your dad put 1 inch of infrastructure in his name. I felt the tight knot behind my ribs loosen a little. Thank you, she softened. Faith, I am proud of you. I will email the letter in 1 hour. Sleep if you can. I ended the call, printed nothing because the letter had not arrived yet, and went back to the kitchen. Through the window, I saw Dad on the deck again. He was pacing with his phone to his ear, and his voice was louder than he. Thought, yes, we are moving her in. Short term for the camera. Long term if it works. No, there is no lease. It is family. We do not need paper. My jaw set without effort. Paper is exactly what we needed. The ocean darkened to slate. The wind pushed against the sliders. Inside the house, the staged laughter wound up again, and I let it spin past me like a commercial I had learned to ignore. After dinner, I walked the perimeter like a tired security guard. I checked the gate latch with my hand and felt where it would need a keypad. I pressed my palm flat against the front door and felt the small give in the kid. Strike plate, where the wood had never been reinforced. I pictured 3-inch screws biting into the framing and imagined the sound they would make. A small, decisive click that would feel like a complete sentence. Back inside, Lana filmed 1 more segment by the tree, a quiet shot of her hands setting an ornament with the word faith in glitter across the front. She smiled into the camera like she had discovered irony. I went to my room and closed the door. The house settled around me. The water kept moving. The email from Olivia arrived exactly when she promised. Guest occupancy policy for Blue Tide properties. Invitation required with specific dates. No standing access. No subletting. No mail forwarding. Any attempts to access without authorization will be documented and reported. I read it twice and felt my shoulders drop as if I had put down a heavy box. I printed 2 copies and taped 1 in the entry closet above the coat hangers, where any invited person would see it. I slid the second into the kitchen drawer where I keep the toolkit. The wind rattled the windows lightly. I lay down on top of the covers, fully dressed, and closed my eyes. The ocean filled the room with its steady breath. Tomorrow morning, I would call a locksmith, and then the world would change. 8. Little they had spent 15 years forgetting to invite me. Today they remembered just enough to try to move in. Tomorrow they will learn there is a difference between a welcome and a key. The locksmith arrived just after 8 in the morning. He was a quiet man in his 60s, thin and sunburned, with silver hair tucked under a baseball cap that read Seabrook Hardware. He introduced himself as Dennis and carried his tools like a surgeon preparing for a delicate procedure. I led him through the house, pointing out every door and gate. He nodded after each one, measuring the frames and muttering in short, thoughtful bursts. While he worked, I made coffee and kept one ear on the sound of his drill. Each click and hum felt like a small reclaiming. When the first lock came loose, the sound echoed through the hallway like punctuation. By the time he reached the back door, Mom appeared in her robe, hair perfect despite the early hour. She stopped at the foot of the stairs, frowning. "What on earth is going on, Faith?" "Just maintenance," I said. She wrapped her robe tighter. "It's Christmas week. We don't need workmen here." Dennis didn't look up. He was already fitting the new strike plate. I smiled softly. "We do today." Dad walked in next, phone in hand, irritation already forming. "Faith, you could have told us. This is disruptive." He said it like I had interrupted a live broadcast, not protecting my own home. I leaned against the counter and stirred my coffee. I like things secure. Lana appeared at the top of the stairs, her voice bright with curiosity. "Is this about the locks?" "She's filming a vlog segment in her robe," Dad said without looking at me. "The followers love candid family moments." Dennis straightened and adjusted his cap. "Ma'am, these are your new keys. Heavy-duty stainless. Same key for all exterior doors." "Thank you," I said. He hesitated, glancing toward my family. "You want me to hand them to you?" "Number, just me." Mom's smile froze. Dennis nodded and pressed the keys into my palm. Then he gathered his tools and left, with a quiet nod that felt like a blessing. As soon as the door shut, the room turned tight with silence. Dad broke it first. "Faith, this is unnecessary. We've stayed here for days without issue." I sipped my coffee. "That was before you brought movers." He set his phone down hard on the counter. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We're family." I looked at Lana, who had turned her camera back on. She spoke into it in a whisper, pretending to vlog. "Sometimes families have disagreements, but it's all about communication." I turned to her. "Please don't film me in my own house." She lowered the phone, embarrassed for a second, then smiled again. "Of course, it's just a habit." Mom stepped closer. "Sweetheart, what's this really about? You've been on edge since we got here." I set the mug down. "You've been on my property without permission, bringing boxes labeled as if you're moving in, using my address for shipments, and talking about my house like it belongs to you." Mom laughed softly. "You always overreact." Number, "You always underestimate me." Dad's face tightened. "Are you implying we're trying to take something from you?" I glanced toward the garage. "You already have." He followed my gaze, realizing for the first time that the garage door was closed and locked. I continued before he could speak. "Everything that arrived yesterday will be inventoried and stored until you arrange pickup. None of it is staying here." Lana's voice rose an octave. "But I have deadlines. I told my sponsors." "You'll tell them the truth," I said. "You don't live here." Mom crossed her arms. "Don't speak to your sister that way." Dad stepped closer. "Faith, stop." "This isn't who you are." I smiled. "Maybe you don't know who I am anymore." He laughed once, a sharp sound meant to control the room. "You're doing this out of spite. You were always jealous of her." That old script again. I felt something inside me steady, not break. I turned and walked to the hall closet. I opened the door and pulled down the paper Olivia had emailed me. The official Blue Tide Properties letterhead gleamed under the light. I held it up. "This document is posted here for everyone's clarity. This property is privately owned by Blue Tide Properties, LLC. Guests are permitted by written invitation only. Any attempt to occupy or film without authorization violates state trespass, law, and privacy statutes." Mom blinked. "What on earth are you talking about? It's a boundary," I said simply. "One you don't get to cross anymore." Lana's assistant, who had just entered from the patio, froze mid-step. The camera in her hand kept recording. Dad realized it a second too late. "Turn that off," he snapped. Too late. I looked at the camera and then went back to my parents. "This is what you wanted, right? Authentic family, real emotion. Here it is." Lana's lips trembled. "You're humiliating us." I shook my head. "No, I'm documenting reality. There's a difference." Dad's face flushed red. "You're out of your mind." Then he reached for the paper in my hand. I stepped back. "Don't." His voice hardened. "I built everything you have." "No, I earned everything I have. You built control. I built an escape. For a second, everything stopped. The only sound was the waves outside and the ticking of the wall clock. Mom finally broke the silence. Faith, please. It's Christmas. Exactly. That's why you should remember whose house you're celebrating in. Lana began crying softly. It sounded more like a performance than pain. I opened the front door. The wind pushed through the room, cold and clean. I think it's best you all take some time to think about what family actually means. Mom shook her head. You can't kick us out. I didn't. I'm asking you to leave. The difference matters. Dad laughed again, but it didn't sound confident anymore. You wouldn't dare. Try me. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned toward Mom. Let's go. We'll deal with this. Mom hesitated, torn between pride and disbelief. Lana stood frozen in the hallway, phone clutched in her hand, mascara smudging. When the door finally shut behind them, the silence that followed was deeper than peace. It was proof. I locked it with one of Dennis's new keys. The sound was small but final. I exhaled and leaned against the wall, feeling my heart slow. For the first time, the house felt like it was breathing with me again. Outside, the wind shifted and the ocean roared louder. I knew they would be back. People like them never leave quietly. But this time, they would meet a locked door, a paper trail, and a daughter who no longer asked to be remembered. That night, I sat by the window and watched the moon rise over the water. The phone buzzed with a string of messages from Mom, none of them worth answering. The last one read, "We'll talk tomorrow. You're making a mistake." I turned the phone face down and whispered to myself, "No, I'm finally not." Then I listened to the ocean until I fell asleep, knowing tomorrow would bring the storm they never saw coming. Morning came in pale gray layers, and the ocean was the only thing that sounded honest. I made coffee and stood at the sink while steam curled up like a small signal to myself. The phone on the counter blinked with new notifications. I turned it face down until the quiet felt solid. Then I picked it up and scrolled. The first hit landed fast. Lana had posted a story at midnight. Soft music, a slow pan across my porch, a caption about healing by the sea with family. The next slide said, "Sometimes home is where your people make room for you." The comments poured in like confetti. "You deserve this. So happy you found a safe place. Your sister is an angel." There it was, a rewrite of my life in real time. I let the sting pass through and not into me. Detachment took practice, but I was strong enough to wait out the rush. A new text from Mom arrived. "We are stopping by this afternoon with a few more essentials. Your sister needs stability. Please be gracious." I set the phone down without answering. The lock Dennis had installed under my hand last night still felt warm in my memory. A small click that meant the line was real. The email from Olivia sat in my inbox. Subject line reading, "Next steps." I opened it at the kitchen table while gulls argued over something in the sand. Her message was a plan, shaped like calm. File a no trespass letter with the county sheriff naming each family member. Notify the postmaster that Blue Tide Properties prohibits mail forwarding or box access by anyone except you. Passwords protect every utility. Document everything. Do not debate. Do not explain. I replied with one word. Understood. Then I drove to town. The sheriff's office was a low brick building that smelled like coffee and beach air. The deputy at the counter had kind eyes and a stack of forms. I said my name, said Blue Tide Properties, and said family matters are currently escalating into property issues. He did not ask for drama. He asked for a parcel number and identification. I handed both across the counter with steady hands. He read in silence, then slid a form back to me. This letter goes on file today. If they step foot on the property after being warned, call dispatch. Keep the call about facts. He paused. Do you expect them? Yes. He nodded and stamped the page with a sound that felt like a gavel. I thanked him and left. At the post office, the woman behind the counter wore red lipstick and a cardigan with tiny snowmen. When I said my box number and the LLC name, her expression shifted into the firm kindness of someone who has seen everything twice. We have had 2 phone inquiries asking if forwarding orders could be added for additional families. I asked when. Yesterday and the day before. Different numbers, but same story. My daughter was overwhelmed. Parents helping. I felt the familiar chill of recognition. Please mark my box as restricted. No forwarding without in-person authorization and identification from me. She wrote it down, initiated it, and pushed a laminated card across the counter. Call this number if anyone tries to pick up mail under your business. I took the card and thanked her by name because I read her tag. On the walk back to my car, I let the winter sun sit on my face. There was a time when I would have taken this as proof that I did not belong anywhere. That time was gone. I belonged wherever I said I did. At home, I changed into jeans and tied my hair back. Then I went room by room with a small spiral notebook and wrote down what I had changed since the day they arrived. Front and side locks replaced. Gate reinforced. Entry closet policy posted. The guest room is empty. Garage closed and inventoried. Internet service scheduled under Blue Tide. I photographed each page and saved it to a folder named Boundaries. The act of writing steadied me. Facts give you a place to stand. At noon, the doorbell rang and my stomach answered before my feet did. I looked through the camera view on my phone and saw a delivery driver with a stack of garment bags and a white envelope taped to a box. He looked bored and cold. I opened the door and signed for the stack, then carried everything into the garage and shut the door behind me. On the box, the envelope was handwritten with my name. I slid it free and felt the slick weight of a printed document inside. My fingers knew it would be bad before my eyes did. I unfolded a 1-page agreement titled Family Occupancy Understanding. The language was choppy and confident. It said Blue Tide Properties consents to a temporary and indefinite residency arrangement for Lana Monroe and her team at the Seabrook address. It referenced shared family assets and emotional hardship. At the bottom, a signature scrawled my name wrong. The middle initial was unfamiliar. The curve of the last letter looked like a flourish I never used. A notary stamp bled at the corner, applied crooked and light. For a second, the edges of my vision went soft. Like the world had pulled away from me and I was floating. Then my breath came back, and I took photos of every inch, including the crooked stamp and the wrong initial. I emailed the images to Olivia with a subject that read, Forgery, delivered to my door. My phone pinged almost immediately with her reply. Do not confront. Do not post. Meet me on video in 30 minutes. I propped my laptop on the kitchen island and joined her call. Olivia's face filled the screen, steady and sharp. She had already circled the notary's name and the incorrect initial in red on her end. This is not your signature. This notary's commission expired last spring. It is a property. Breathe. We are going to enjoy this. I felt my shoulders drop at the word enjoy. She continued in that calm tone of someone who has collected other people's storms before. I am filing a cease and desist with notarized exhibits, plus a fraud alert with the county and the notary board. Second, I am sending a no filming notice with legal citations. Third, we will lock the utilities so tight they cannot order a light bulb without your code. You will not argue with them in your kitchen. You will not explain yourself on their camera. You will post one thing and one thing only, when the time is right. What? The deed. Clean. Legible. Blue Tide front and center. No caption. The internet will do the rest. I nodded. She leaned closer. One more thing. Expect a night move. People who fake paper like to back it up with presents. You will not open the door. You will call dispatch. You will use the word trespass. She smiled without humor. I like that word. I ended the call and sat in the silence of my kitchen. My phone buzzed on cue with a new post from Lana, a carousel of photos labeled Moving Day Part 2. The final slide was a mood board for a nursery content arc. Soft blues, sea glass jars, white wicker. The caption said, "We are so grateful to have found our place." The comments made my teeth ache. I opened my photo gallery and looked at the images I had taken of the forged document. Then I looked at a different image, one I had not posted anywhere. It was a clear shot of the recorded deed to the Seabrook property with Blue Tide Properties listed as owner. The name sat there, in black ink, like armor. I typed a single line and then deleted it. No caption, Olivia had said. Let the paper speak. I uploaded the image to my account, where maybe a few hundred people followed. Me. I hit the post and set the phone down. Within minutes, the first comments landed, small stones dropping into water. Wait, is this your LLC? So the house is owned by Blue Tide, not the Monroes. A few more appeared, tentative and curious. Someone asked if I was being bullied. Someone else said they had guessed this for days. The rhythm changed on Lana's page, too. Sprinkled among the praise were questions that did not smile. Is this your sister's place? Did she consent? Is this a collab or a takeover? I did not answer anyone. I made lunch and ate it at the counter while the ocean breathed in and out. Around 3 in the afternoon, my doorbell rang again. I checked the camera and saw my neighbors, Sarah and Tom, both holding a casserole dish wrapped in a towel. I opened the door because kindness is different than intrusion. Sarah lifted the dish like an offering. Cinnamon rolls. Figured today might be a lot. We live down the street. We have eyes. Tom nodded once in agreement. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Thank you. We stayed on the porch, not turning it into a visit, just a small human exchange that reminded me the world contained better versions of family. After they left, I walked the perimeter the way I did when I could not shake a sense that air was moving toward a storm. The sky had the look of steel behind veils. The gulls flew lower. I tested the side gate and felt the strength of the new keypad. I checked the front door camera angle and shifted it a hair so it would catch anyone standing to the side. Back in the kitchen, my phone chimed with a long message from Dad. He used words like compromise and obligation and mental health. He wrote that they would arrive after dinner to settle things like adults. He ended with a sentence that tried to sound gentle. Do not make us escalate. I read it 3 times and felt the old reflex to defend myself. Then I pictured the forged signature and the expired notary, and my hands went. Still, I typed a single sentence. All communication will be in writing through counsel. That was all. I put on a sweater and sat by the window. Evening stitched itself across the water with a patient hand. The house darkened around me in quiet stages. I did not turn on every light the way they would have. I lit one lamp and let it make a small island of gold in the room. My phone buzzed with a screenshot from Olivia. Cease and desist sent. Fraud alerts filed. The sheriff has your letter. Her last line read, a call if wheels hit gravel. It was almost 7 when the camera sent its first alert. Motion at driveway. I stood without rushing and looked at the screen. Headlights turned at the top of the lane and fell across the palms like a white curtain. An SUV rolled forward and parked as close as it could get to the entry. The engine cut. Silence returned like a held breath. The porch camera showed the 3 of them in a small cluster. Mom in a wool coat that tried to look gentle. Lana with a scarf and a face fixed somewhere between hopeful and set. Dad held a folder in his left hand and a shallow smile that meant he thought he had already won. The doorbell rang. The sound seemed softer than last night. Or maybe I was harder. I did not open the door. I pressed the intercom button on my phone. This is private property owned by Blue Tide Properties. You are not permitted entry. Mom leaned toward the door like a woman coaxing a frightened child. Sweetheart, do not be like this. We came to talk. There's nothing to discuss at the door. Dad lifted the folder and spoke to the wood. We have an agreement. I thought of the wrong initial. I thought of the crooked stamp. I thought of every year they forgot I existed until I had something they wanted. I kept my voice level. That document is fraudulent. Leave now. Lana started to cry in a way that looked practiced and felt real enough to hurt. You cannot do this to me. I said nothing to her because I knew any word at that door would be used against me. Dad tried one more time. We are your family. I gave him the line that felt like an anchor. Then act like it. The folder was lowered. The porch light made his face older than I remembered. He took Mom's elbow. Lana hesitated, then stepped back. The camera watched them turn and walk to the SUV. I stayed by the window until the tail lights disappeared and the ocean took the sound back. I did not relax. I knew the night had more to say. At 12:41 in the morning, The driveway camera pinged again, headlights again. A sedan this time, no engine cut, just a slow roll to the curb. A figure stepped out in a dark coat, carrying a thick white envelope. He walked toward the mailbox cluster by the street, lifted my slot, and tried to force the envelope through the narrow opening. It stuck. He pushed harder until the paper bowed. When it finally slipped inside, he smoothed his hands over the metal like he was burying something. The porch camera caught his profile when he glanced back at the house. Dad looked older there, too. He got in the car and drove away into the kind of night that prefers secrets. I watched the playback twice, then saved it to the same folder where I kept the pictures of the forged agreement. Boundaries held more than lines now. They held proof. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for dawn, knowing exactly what I would find when I opened that mailbox, and exactly who I would call when I did. The morning light felt thin, like paper you could see through. I walked down the driveway barefoot, the air sharp enough to sting, and opened the mailbox. The envelope was wedged deep inside, still creased from where he had forced it in. My name was written in thick black ink, too deliberate to be casual. I held it up to the light before I opened it, half expecting it to vanish. Inside was a short letter printed on company stationery that didn't exist. It read like a contract, another claim to the house, another lie. At the bottom was his signature, bold and tidy, the same one I had watched him use to sign birthday cards and mortgage checks. I stared at it until the lines blurred, then folded it back and slipped it into a plastic sleeve. It was evidence now, not emotion. Back inside, I set the envelope on the counter beside my coffee cup and called Olivia. She picked up on the first ring, already sounding alert. "He left it in your mailbox, didn't he?" I said yes. She exhaled through her teeth. Mail fraud. We add that to the list. Do not throw it away. I told her I wouldn't. She said she'd contact the postal inspector and file it before noon. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen island and watched the ocean turn silver. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the kind of silence before a verdict. At 9, my phone began vibrating nonstop. Messages, mentions, comments. I didn't have to open them to know what had happened. Olivia's voice echoed in my head. The internet will do the rest. When I finally looked, Lana's followers had turned the tide overnight. Seconds of my deed were circulating everywhere, posted under her smiling photos. Questions stacked under every video. Who really owns the house? Did she fake the paperwork? Is this why her sister kicked her out? Her sponsors started issuing statements, one by one. We were unaware of the property situation. Collaboration paused pending verification. The shine was peeling fast, and I could feel her panic without even seeing her. By late morning, the first call came. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then came a message from Mom. "What have you done? She's being destroyed online." I read it twice and felt something complicated move through me. Not triumph, not guilt. Just the truth landing where it always should have. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. Not a ring, a knock. I checked the camera before I opened it. It wasn't them. It was a woman in a gray blazer, hair pulled back, badge clipped to her lapel. She introduced herself through the glass as Inspector Ramirez from the United States Postal Inspection Service. I let her in. She was direct, professional, and kind in a way that didn't require softness. She took the envelope, photographed it, and bagged it as evidence. This qualifies as attempted mail fraud. We'll verify the source and signature. You did the right thing saving it. I asked her what would happen next. She said they'd likely contact him for questioning. It might escalate, depending on what else turned up. Then she handed me her card and said, "If he contacts you, forward everything to me." After she left, I sat at the table staring at the card. The government seal at the top glinted in the light. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reality was catching up. That afternoon, Olivia called again. Her voice was brisk. "We're in motion." The notary board responded. The stamp on that fake agreement was reported stolen last year. The county clerk flagged the file for attempted deed fraud. The sheriff is coordinating with the postal service. She paused, her tone softening. "You okay?" I said yes, but my voice came out smaller than I wanted. She said quietly, "They're going to learn that silence isn't weakness. It's a strategy. I looked out the window at the ocean. Waves were folding in slow rhythm, the same as they had the night everything started. I could feel something closing in, but it wasn't fear. It was inevitable. Around 4, my doorbell rang again. The camera showed Mom. Alone this time. No coat, no makeup, just standing there clutching her purse like a life raft. I hesitated, then opened the door halfway. Her eyes were red, but not from tears, from exhaustion. "Faith, please. We need to talk," I said softly. "I don't think that's a good idea." She stepped closer, voice trembling. He didn't mean for it to go this far. He thought he could fix it. Fix it. That word scraped against me. By forging my signature. By breaking the law. By humiliating me publicly. She flinched. He panicked. The investors pulled out after the scandal broke online. They're talking about lawsuits. I don't know what to do. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her face. For a moment, I saw the mother who used to braid my hair before school. Then I remembered every year she looked away while he erased me from their holidays. "You tell him to call Olivia. Everything goes through her now." She shook her head. "You won't even talk to your own family. You stopped being that when you made me a liability." The words landed heavy, and she blinked like I had slapped her. "Faith, you can't do this. You can't destroy your father's life." I wanted to laugh, but it came out quiet. He did that himself. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Finally, she whispered, "He's sick. His heart. The stress." I looked at her steadily. "I hope he gets help. But not from me." For a long time she just stood there, the wind lifting strands of her hair. Then she nodded once, turned, and walked toward the car parked at the end of the driveway. I watched until she was gone. Inside, I locked the door and pressed my back against it. My chest ached. But not from regret. It was released. By evening, the headlines had shifted. A local paper ran a story online. "Influencer family faces legal trouble over property dispute." The photo was of my beach house, golden in sunset light. I read the article twice, then closed the tab. My phone buzzed again. Olivia sent a message. "Tomorrow morning there's a hearing scheduled. They'll need to appear. You don't. The paperwork stands on its own." I typed back, "Thank you." She replied, "You've already won. Just stay steady." The sky turned copper outside, the kind of light that made everything look softer than it was. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window. The house felt different now. Not like a refuge, but like a statement. Every shadow, every lock, every quiet inch was proof that I had reclaimed what they once took. Still, a small part of me wondered if they would really stop. People like that don't surrender. They regroup. I looked at the folder on my table filled with documents, photos, and printouts. Each page was a boundary drawn in black and white. And tomorrow, the world would see what happened when someone finally stopped forgiving. I closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and let the hum of the ocean fill the dark. It was steady, endless, and mine. For the first time in years, I didn't dream of being forgotten. I dreamt of quiet that no one could take away. The courthouse in Seabrook looked like every small coastal courthouse I have ever seen. Pale stucco and a flag that snapped in the wind. I parked half a block away and sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel, listening to the ocean in the distance. Olivia had told me I did not need to be here, that the paperwork would stand without me, but I wanted to see it through with my own eyes. I wanted to see what the law looked like when it finally faced us. Inside, the hallways smelled faintly of salt and floor cleaner. A clerk pointed me toward a small hearing room with a door sign that read, "A Civil Calendar." I chose a chair in the back and kept my face neutral. Olivia slipped in beside me a minute later. Crisp black suit, hair pulled into a neat twist, a folder the color of storm clouds resting on her lap. She said softly that our petition was first. She added that the postal inspector and the deputy were present if the judge had questions. When the bailiff called the case, I stood because my body wanted to respect the moment even if I was not required to speak. The judge was a woman, with silver hair and the even voice of someone who had seen every version of family trouble. Olivia introduced Blue Tide Properties, the parcel number, the guest policy, and the sequence of events in sentences that landed like stones across a creek. She offered the deed, the no trespass letter, the photos of the forged family occupancy paper with the wrong middle initial, the notary commission that had expired, and the time-stamped video from 12:41 in the morning of my dad. Shoving the envelope into the mailbox slot, the postal inspector identified herself and confirmed the chain of custody for the envelope I had surrendered, a short nod that carried the weight of federal law. The judge turned to the opposite table. My parents and Lana entered late, the door clicking shut behind them. Dad wore a navy blazer and a face set to reasonable. Mom had on a cream sweater that tried to look soft. Lana looked small without a camera in her hand. A scarf wound tight around her throat. They sat with a man I recognized from my dad's social circle. Not a lawyer, a consultant with poor posture, and a folder too thin to matter. The judge asked whether they had counsel. Dad said he had representation on the way. The judge said calmly that we would proceed with what we had. Olivia handed up the exhibits, each page labeled and tabbed. She spoke in the present tense, not the past, as if to say this is not a story, this is evidence. She described the first mover, the labels on the boxes that used the word wardrobe and ring lights. She described the social media posts that claimed my porch and my view as Lana's healing sanctuary. She described the forged paper delivered by a courier the next day. She described the mailbox footage and the printed letter on a company letterhead that did not exist. Each fact settled like sand after a wave. Then Dad stood and did what he always does. He tried to turn the room into a living room where he controlled the furniture. He said we were a family navigating a difficult season. He said I was overwhelmed and single, and that he was helping with logistics. He said the paperwork was a misunderstanding. He said the notary must have made an honest error. He used the phrase family asset more than once. He used the word fragile when he spoke about Lana. He used the word unwell when he spoke about me. I kept my gaze on a spot just left of his shoulder and breathed through every syllable, like it was wind that would pass. The judge asked him a handful of precise questions. Did he have a signed lease? Number. Did he have written consent from Blue Tide Properties for any person to occupy the property? Number. Did he sign or authorize the use of a document titled Family Occupancy Understanding? He hesitated. He said he did not recall. The judge lifted the exhibit, looked at the wrong middle initial, and then looked back at him with a face that had no room left for stories. The postal inspector spoke next. She explained in clean, concise language that placing a document into a locked mailbox that purports to alter property rights can constitute mail fraud if done without authorization. She said her office had logged 2 prior calls requesting forwarding orders to my business box from numbers linked to my parents. She said those requests were denied. She did not add drama to any of it. She did not need to. The deputy confirmed that a no trespass letter naming my parents and Lana had been filed 2 days earlier, and that a welfare standby the previous evening ended without incident when they left at my request. He said the department understood the property was owned by Blue Tide Properties, and that any attempt to return without written permission would trigger an immediate response. The judge nodded once and lowered her eyes to her notes. When she spoke, the room stilled in that way people get quiet around medical news. She said the court found a credible showing of ongoing attempted trespass, attempted fraud involving a forged instrument and misuse of mail to create a false paper trail. She granted a temporary protective order for 30 days that prohibited my dad, my mom, and Lana from entering or approaching within 100 yards of the property. She ordered that all communication be limited to counsel. She warned that any violation could result in arrest. She signed 3 copies and passed them to the clerk. My body did not shear. It was released. The sound of her pen against paper felt like a door latching from the inside. Outside, on the courthouse steps, reporters waited with smartphones and mics. I would have walked the other way, but Olivia took 1 step forward and said she would make a brief statement. She said Blue Tide Properties appreciates the court's order. She said we value privacy and safety. She said the facts speak for themselves. Then she guided me through the small crowd with a hand at my elbow. the way you move someone you respect through a storm. In the parking lot, my phone pulsed like a living thing. Headlines had multiplied and sharpened. The local paper's write-up was already updated with the order. A regional outlet picked it up and ran a headline that said, "Court blocks. Influential family from occupying beach home after alleged forgery." I opened Lana's page out of muscle memory and saw a single post, white text on a gray square, taking a break to focus on family and mental health. Comments were turned off. For a second, I felt a thread of grief for the girl under the brand who had once shared a bedroom with me and told me secrets into the dark. Then I remembered the boxes in my garage labeled Nursery Content Arc, and I let the thread go. At home, the house looked the same from the street. Palm fronds moved in a slow green wave. The porch light I had left on for luck still glowed. Inside, the air felt new. I set the order copies in a folder by the door, next to the guest policy and the spare batteries for the cameras. I wrote the deputy's name on a sticky note and tacked it inside the closet for easy reach. Then I took the cinnamon rolls Sarah and Tom had left and put them on a plate, sliced one in half and ate it cold. It tasted like kindness you do not have to earn. In late afternoon, the sky turned the color of pewter and the wind shifted, bringing a hint of rain. I walked to the garage and opened the side door. The boxes stared back in their careful stacks. I called the moving company and arranged a pickup for the next morning, prepaid and scheduled by me, so there would be no confusion. The man on the phone said I sounded calm for someone dealing with family. I said calm is cheaper. As evening fell, a car rolled slowly down the street and paused in front of the house. The camera caught the license plate and the outline of a face. Not my dad's. A second later, the porch bell chimed. I checked the feed and saw a man with an attaché and a practiced half smile. He spoke into the camera in the tone professionals use when they think a script will open a locked door. He said he was a mediator retained by my parents. He said he was here to facilitate voluntary access. I pressed the intercom. The court has issued a protective order. You are on notice. Please leave. He straightened, adjusted his tie, and left without looking at the lens again. Two neighbors had stopped on the sidewalk across the street and watched them. Brief exchange with arms folded, the way people do when they choose sides quietly. The ocean grew loud after dark, a low drum behind everything. I lit one candle on the kitchen island and brewed tea. I texted Sarah to say thank you again, then scrolled until I found a quiet playlist and let the piano fill the edges of the house. My phone buzzed with an email from Olivia. She had filed the order with the sheriff, the post office, and the utility companies. She had drafted a notice to Lana's management, reminding them that filming on the property without permission would be a violation of the order and state privacy statutes. She had attached a copy of the injunction with the judge's signature for fast sharing if needed. Her last line read, "Breathe, then sleep. You are safe." I took the papers and placed a clean copy of the order in a clear acrylic frame on the entry table. It looked almost like decor, like a museum placard that tells you what you are looking at. Boundary, mixed media, paper and steel, and a woman's patience. 2025. I smiled at the thought, and then felt a sudden wave of tiredness that went to the bone. I took a shower as the first drops of rain tapped the glass. I pulled on a soft sweater and socks and stood for a second in front of the window, watching the driveway shine. The phone buzzed once more. A text from Mom. It said 3 sentences. We received the order. We will comply. I never wanted it to be like this. I read it twice and felt the ache rise and fall. Then I put the phone down and turned off the lamp. Sometime after midnight, the rain came steady and the ocean roared. I woke up once and checked the cameras. Empty driveway. Street lights painting the pavement in long lines. The acrylic frame on the entry table caught a little of that pale glow and sent it back. I went back to bed and slept without dreams. At dawn, I woke to gulls and the smell of clean air after rain. I poured coffee and stood at the sink while the kettle hissed. A notification blinked on my phone. It was a calendar reminder I had set weeks ago when I first got the keys. Host a small holiday brunch. Invite neighbors. I stared at the words and felt something in me soften. Maybe not brunch. Not yet. But soon. I put the phone down and carried my mug to the window. The sky was clear, and the water shone like glass. The movers would come in a few hours. The porch would be quiet. The documents would sit where I had placed them, and somewhere across town, a man who had treated me like an asset would be studying a piece of paper with my name on it, and finally learning that I was not a piece on his board. I breathed in the morning, steady and slow, and waited for the knock that would signal the last of their boxes leaving my house. The movers arrived just after 8. 2 men in gray uniforms and work boots stepped out of the truck, their breath visible in the cool air. I opened the door and nodded toward the garage. Everything's boxed and labeled. They smiled and got to work without small talk, the kind of professionals who understand that silence can be a language too. The sound of boxes being lifted and tape being cut was strangely satisfying. I made coffee while I loaded the truck, each thud against the ramp carrying years of weight that no longer belonged to me. When the last box was gone, I signed the form, thanked them, and watched as the truck disappeared down the street. The driveway was empty again. Clean slate, clean air. I stood there for a while with my mug warm in my hands, realizing it was over. Not with celebration, not with fireworks, just a quiet ending that felt truer than anything I had imagined. Inside, I opened all the windows. The wind moved through the room, salt and sun mixing with the faint scent of paint and cinnamon. The house felt alive again, not haunted by tension, but humming with possibility. By mid-morning, Olivia called. Her voice carried a smile this time. They didn't contest the orders, she said. The county has filed the final paperwork. It's permanent now. You're clear. I leaned against the counter and let that sink in. Thank you for everything. She paused for a moment. You did the work, Faith. You built the walls and held your ground. Most people never learn how. After we hung up, I walked out to the deck. The ocean was calm, the color of pewter and glass, stretching out like something infinite. A pelican skimmed low over the water, its wings brushing the surface before lifting again. I thought about how many years I had spent wishing for approval from people who could never give it, and how strange it felt to no longer want it. The afternoon passed in small, ordinary movements. I folded laundry, cleaned the kitchen, wrote a note to Sarah and Tom, thanking them for their kindness. At 3, there was a soft knock on the door. I checked the camera and saw Mom standing alone again. No car waiting this time. I opened the door halfway. She looked smaller than before, her shoulders curved, her hair pulled back loosely. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. I came to say goodbye, she said quietly. We're leaving town for a while. Your father's resting. The stress has taken a toll. I nodded. I hope he finds peace. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I don't expect you to forgive us. I just wanted to see you standing here, to know you're all right. I hesitated, then said, I am. She looked past me into the house, then back at me. It's beautiful, Faith. You made it yours. It's where I learned what family isn't, I said softly, and what self-respect is. She nodded, understanding without defending. I'll always love you, she whispered. I know, I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it, without wanting anything back. She stepped down the porch steps slowly, turned at the gate, and gave a small wave. Then she walked away, the sun catching in her hair for one brief second before she disappeared around the corner. When the gate clicked shut, I exhaled, the kind of exhale that comes from years of holding your breath without realizing it. The house behind me was still, but not empty. It was full of everything I had reclaimed. That evening, I built a small fire in the pit outside. The wind had quieted and the skies stretched wide, streaked with gold and lavender. I poured a glass of wine and watched the first flame catch, steady and sure. For the first time, I let myself remember the good moments, too, the ones that didn't make it into the story. My dad teaching me to ride a bike. My mom humming while she cooked. Lana falling asleep on my shoulder after a storm. I let them exist, without rewriting them. They were part of me, but they no longer owned me. When the stars came out, I turned on a small radio. The song that played was something from years ago, something I hadn't heard since college. I smiled at how full circle it all felt. The phone buzzed once beside me, a message from Olivia. All done. Congratulations. I texted back a single line. It's finally quiet. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The The world was pink and silver, the ocean still half asleep. I brewed coffee and stepped outside barefoot, the boards cool under my feet. The air smelled like salt and pine. As I watched the horizon light up, I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to call, or to show up, or to remember me. I had become my own witness. Sometimes revenge isn't loud or cruel. Sometimes it's peaceful. I thought about how the world might see me now. The woman whose family tried to steal her house and lost everything instead. But that wasn't the story I carried. Mine was quieter. It was about boundaries, truth, and choosing not to shrink. I went back inside and wrote one sentence on a slip of paper I kept by the door. Remember who you were before they made you doubt it. I pinned it under a small seashell and left it there. Later, as the day warmed, I walked down to the beach. The sand was smooth from last night's tide. I let the water touch my feet, cool and forgiving. The waves came and went like breath, like forgiveness itself. The house stood behind me, steady and strong against the morning light. It wasn't just mine in name anymore. It was mine, in peace, in silence, in every choice that had led me here. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I had carried, then let it go with the tide. And if you've ever been told you were too much or not enough for your own family, remember this: silence can be power, and truth can be the loudest revenge. Tell me in the comments what integrity means to you and where you're listening from.